This, ladies and gentlemen, is what the fuck I'm talking about. This is the perfect representation of 5/1 buildings right here. You see this shit? Oh, God. Oh, what a fucking blight this is. Oh, my God. I hate it. I fucking hate it so much. I hate it. Isn't that mixed use housing? No, dude. The fucking look of it, okay? Did you not hear what I just said? I think this design is dog shit. It's not, oh God, oh. I just hate it. I love having all these just so we can use the rest of the area for parking spaces. Yeah. It's so nasty. I fucking hate it. Sorry, boss, but 5/1 is the only density America's ever going to get. It just sucks so much ass. Bro, you have zero taste. You think this is taste? This is cyanide. That's what you're tasting. What you're tasting right now is fucking poison. Okay? Meanwhile, in superior Soviet building, unironically much prefer this. At least every fucking unit has a balcony, bro. What do you mean? And probably living spaces in between as well, like public spaces in between it. Oh, God. Someone said my trigger word, Culver City. Oh, God. Oh, don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it, chatter. I love how fucking stupid people are. Where they think like, I'm not grossed out by this design, and I just hate the concept of multiple family units. Like that's what I'm advocating against here. I hate multiple family units, and not like how ugly, how much of a blight this fucking shit is. It's so stupid. While I'm literally in the process of explaining to you how I would prefer even this, which is my least favorite overarching style in architecture. Yimpies have no fucking brain processing power. They're like, no, my way or the highway. It has to be this ugly ass dog shit. Anyway, bungalow court apartments are a good small solution. Too bad they don't make them anymore in LA. What is this? Commie blocks are awesome, actually. A reply to living ironically in Europe.
Years behind the socioeconomics of their own people. In June 1940, 50 million people live and comprehensive policies for human and industrial resettlement in his shift, of course, required effective and quick urban planning. So, consider
This is one of the only Victorian-style American mixed-use streets. Oh, don't tell me I'm gonna nut. Wait, is this Hoboken? It looks like it might be Hoboken. This is my shit, dude. Oh my God, I nut when I think about this, okay? I think unironically, it kind of looks like Hoboken, doesn't it? The sidewalk is still much too narrow. This is every small town in the Midwest. Have you heard cities are trying to let the homeowners rent tiny homes in their backyards? Yes, they do that in California too. That's everything in the Midwest, Lamau. I know. I know. Places that fucking straight up are still like main streets in every fucking small town is kind of like this. I'm born and raised in Hoboken. This is in Hoboken.
I'm
Bungalow
Valerie
court
Gustin, and I've been
apartments?
an architect in Los Angeles for over 20 years. Today, I'm going to break down architectural details of some of the most popular. Architect Sylvanus Marston is often credited as being the inventor
I know
of
what
the
these are.
bungalow
These are
court
sick.
apartment. And a lot of his buildings are concentrated in Pasadena, although many of these buildings were going up around the same time all over South and East Los Angeles. In this image here, we see a couple of things that characterize a bungalow court apartment. So you can see here that there's a central walkway that went down the middle. Every house had a sort of front porch that faces the courtyard for access, and people also had ample garden space that made it feel much more like a single-family house than an apartment building. Most of the bungalow court apartments were built at the turn of the 20th century. They're also an endangered species in Los Angeles, much like the dingbat apartment.
It's so funny because like almost all of the fucking everything in Los Angeles was built in 1920s, man. There's no weather. So literally nothing withers away.
Because current zoning laws wouldn't allow for this many units to be built on these size lots. The houses were small, typically 500 to 600 square feet, but you could essentially fit sometimes 4 to 6 units on the same lot that would hold a single family residence.
That density is crap. Still preferable to the fucking single family zoning that exists now in its place. Have you heard of earthquakes? Wait, what? Everybody, have you lived or been to Los Angeles? So many of our fucking apartments were built in 1920s.
Now let's take a look at how the bungalow court apartments organize the lot. So in this one block, we can see 3 different types of bungalow court apartments. The first one has a nice, generous courtyard in the middle, and you'll see that each one of the buildings is separate. The courtyard is lushly landscaped, and you'll see that there's a unit at the end, and parking happens at the rear of the building. The second building provides...
They have these in Beverly Hills too, but of course, as always, that's all been turned into single family. Like they're all separate units now.
Smaller
in separate
units,
houses.
but then there was a slightly larger unit towards the rear of the apartment. Each of the units is its own standalone, separate house. There's a generous courtyard in the middle, and the houses get light on all 4 sides.
It's so
What a
sick.
contrast to a dingbat apartment. In this example here, it's a much more dense example of a bungalow court apartment, but many of the characteristics that we love about a bungalow court apartment are still available. There are small courtyard spaces, the courtyard is still landscaped, and abundant.
Before the fucking Yimbys like lose their goddamn minds, making sure that there's like ample natural light and also having access to like a shared like green area is incredibly important in city planning in general. So shut the fuck up. Okay? Not every fucking aspect needs to be this disgusting, dull, concrete bullshit. Like, oh, that's space. You could build a fucking, you could put a 5/1 there. That's too much space.
Natural light goes into every unit. The bungalow court apartments were a great first stop if you were coming to live to Los Angeles, because wherever you came from, you really got the LA experience of being able to enjoy the outdoors. It was really communal, and it was the closest you could come to living in a single family house if you couldn't afford one. So many of the things that bungalow apartments did at the turn of the 20th centuries and into the early 20s, the city of Los Angeles is revisiting now. They realize that density really helps with affordability.
Yeah.
Many new
No way.
ordinances are allowing your standard single-family lot to be built with more additional units. Next up, Mission Revival. Now, what makes Mission Revival so enduring to Southern California is because it's familiar and traditional. It has a certain warmth that people like and
These
can
houses are
relate to.
sick.
It really speaks to the history of California before it became part of the United States. Mission Revival is the style of some of the earliest built structures in California. The Spanish
so
built
sick.
a total of 21 missions in California over a period of about 65 years. You actually find it in many neighborhoods of Los Angeles, San Fernando Valley, South and East Los Angeles, and also all over West Hollywood. To learn more about Mission Revival, let's start by looking at an actual mission. The first thing you'll notice is the thick walls that were built typically of adobe. They had clay barrel tile roofs, and then finally the arched colonnade, which provided temperature control.
The missions are not sick. Yeah, bro. I'm not talking about like No, when I say mission revival as a style of architecture is sick, I'm actually saying what the missionaries did was awesome. I'm glad you were able to parse through my words and find the truth behind what I meant. I fucking love missionaries, famously. Pro-Catholic missionaries all the way.
By blocking the direct sunlight from these interior spaces, one of the elements we typically would define as sustainable in today's time. Now, a lot of ideas from mission architecture made its way into residential architecture in the early 1900s. Architecturally, we see a lot of similarities between these two buildings. First is the use of the colonnade, and in the residential example, you'll see that it happens at both levels, up here and there. These deep overhangs would protect the interior of the house from direct sunlight and keep it cool during the hot days and warm during the nights. Both use the red clay barrel tile and, of course, the arch. In addition to that, you'll see that the corbels that extend out from the roof is also evident in both of these examples. You'll also notice, however, some significant differences between these two examples. The arch at the front of the house has a more peaked apex, and the ones at the second story, one is more shallow and the other is more circular. Another important difference to note is that much of these residential buildings were built out of wood framing, whereas the missions were built.
You're actually not wrong. Chatter, who said, is that the house from Grand Theft Auto 5? Yes, technically, I think, was it Michael? Michael's house was like this style, like Spanish style.
Out of
Moon Sanem, thank you for the 20 community gifted subs. You might not be able to get a missionary style house, but you will be able to get a gifted sub at the top of the hour. And no longer see the ads at the top of the hour, that is. At the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break. If you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe for $5 or free, baby. Here it is. Here's the 3-minute ad break now.
Actual adobe or stone construction. And on a typical single-family house where you're building out of a wood frame wall, the wall doesn't have to be as thick. So you still were able to get some of the shading value of these colonnades, but because these walls were built out of wood framing, you didn't get the same insulation value out of these walls that you did when you built out of adobe or stone. Let's take a look at what mission revival architecture looks like in a more contemporary example.
Sick.
Now, this house is much smaller, but once again, we still see a lot of the techniques that made mission revival architecture pleasing to the eye. These houses were able to be air conditioned, but we still have this colonnaded protected entry with a deep overhang. We also still have a large arch opening that goes into the primary public spaces of the house, typically the living room. There are a few decorative elements on the facade, wall sconces, and then also a decorative roof vent, which allows all the heat to escape from the roof during the hot summer months. Mission revival architecture is not only popular for residential architecture, it's also used all over Los Angeles in places like.
I also love a lot of the intricate tile work that many mission style homes use on the floors and even on the arcs. Yes, that's another fucking awesome fact. I grew up on these houses back in San Diego. My parents still live there now, but it definitely was weird feeling considering the history since I'm Mexican and indigenous.
Union Station, Beverly Hills City Hall, and a host of other building types, including hospitals, churches, schools, and train stations. And people often talk about Los Angeles doesn't have much architectural history, but mission revival architecture is.
God, LA is so ugly. Bro, this guy is literally showing some of the best architecture in Los Angeles. The fuck do you mean? This is unironically I think, some of the most cohesive, coherent, structured architectural choices that you literally do not see in many cities in this country now. This is actually good. You are uncultured. Oh my God.
That history that's always visible. Next up is a type.
Shadows will go to like a European city. They'll go to fucking like, they'll go to Italy and be like, oh my God, look at how beautiful. And then shit on this.
Of house that most people dream about when they think about living in Los Angeles, the Boardwalk Beach House. LA is famous for its boardwalks, like Santa Monica, Venice Beach, or Manhattan Beach. So what makes the Boardwalk Beach House different from a typical beach house? Let's start with the back, which really reads as the front of the house. There's a couple of important things to note when looking at the Boardwalk Beach House. First is directly in front of the rear of the house where the best views are is also a public boardwalk. Another important thing to note is that the rear of the house is typically very expansive and open, providing the views to the beach, which is why you live there. Much like a dingbat, the space between the houses is relatively narrow, so there's not much emphasis placed on windows or natural light at those locations. All of the energy is put towards this rear facade that offers these amazing views to the Pacific Ocean. One of the things that sets boardwalk beach houses apart from its
I do think that the beach houses, like the boardwalk beach houses, are kind of ugly.
other counterparts is the fact that they're more likely to be a custom home. Unlike a developer who might build 6 or 7 dingbat apartments at the same time, a boardwalk beach house is more likely to be commissioned by someone who will hire an architect. You end up with a much more varied and eclectic beach.
Yeah, and they're fucking uggo. Because every boardwalk beach house architect is a fucking crackhead, dude. Look at this.
Front than you would in a typical urban neighborhood in Los Angeles. One of the main challenges with a boardwalk beach house is how do you deal with public access and protecting privacy and views. One of the main ways is to either submerge or elevate the primary floors of the house. Other examples mean that you kind of close more of that front part of the house down when you're at street level, and in other houses, they'll use landscaping. I often like to think of the boardwalk beach house as a mullet, business in front, party in the back. Now let's take a look at the business side of the boardwalk beach house. Boardwalk beach houses are typically on narrow lots, and the front of the house is typically on an alley or a small street with limited views. The business side of the beach house is pretty boring. All you typically got is a 2-car garage. Much like their friends, the dingbat, you typically also have a pedestrian entrance that happens along the side yard of the house. So it's a typically dark.
It is low-key kind of dope, though. Like, this area is, I mean, I've never lived in it. I've never lived in that part of town. But the vibes are very different, but very cool as well, I think. Like Venice is what this is.
And also canyon-like entrance into.
I feel like is an entirely different vibe overall in this part of Los Angeles. People joke about how, like, yeah, Manhattan Beach, Venice, these not Manhattan Beach, but like Venice specifically, feels like an entirely different part, and that like when you live in Venice, you never leave Venice, and vice versa.
To the main house, which is all about parking and the utilitarian needs. The back of the house is really where all the action is. The great views of the beach, the sand, the people, all of the things that make living in California great. Boardwalk beach houses do provide a great opportunity for architects to experiment and create really unique houses. Now let's take a look at a true classic, the California bungalow. The California bungalow was one of the other housing styles that became popular at the turn of the 20th century as California's population continued to grow. The great thing about the California bungalow is that these homes could be purchased from a
These are also sick.
magazine. The lumber arrived pre-cut, much in the same way as if you might get a piece of flat pack furniture, and could be assembled right there on site in a number of
Bro, remember when people did that?
weeks. Now, one of the most popular.
Well, not remember. Obviously, you weren't around. I was. I'm that old. But that's how motherfuckers build houses, bro.
Is the craftsman style bungalows. You'll find them all over Los Angeles, but also in areas specifically like Silver Lake, Echo Park, and also parts of South Los Angeles. So what are some of the characteristics that make a California bungalow quintessentially California and so popular in Los Angeles? Craftsman style architecture has some specific characteristics that we can clearly see here in this image. Those include exposed rafters, a large, deep, open porch, tapered columns, and gabled roofs. A lot of this dates back to the relationship of craftsman architecture to the arts and crafts movement, which was really popular in the 19th century. Craftsman is often what we associate with the California bungalow, but it's probably important to note that not all California bungalows were built in the craftsman architectural style. There were a wide variety of California bungalow styles, including shotgun style houses where all the rooms were laid one after another in a sequence. You also had smaller 2-room bungalows similar to the dog trot house, which you might find in the American Southeast. So called because it was basically 2 rooms on either side of an open breezeway, and a dog could just trot on right through the middle. The California bungalow epitomizes the Californian lifestyle. One of the great things about living in California is the indoor-outdoor living experience. The word bungalow comes from a Hindi word meaning a house in the Bengali style. A house in the Bengali style typifies some of the same characteristics that we find in the California bungalow. a wide veranda, a low-sloped roof that allowed shade and protection from the environment. The California bungalow epitomizes the California living experiences. As a single-family house, it offered all of the great things people came to California for: abundant sunshine, great weather, and the ability to be outdoors for a large part of the year. Those are just some of the architectural styles that define life in Los Angeles. Let me know which is your favorite in the comments below.
That was sick. Can you cover the Apple River stabbing? No. Why would I cover local Minnesota news with 400 views on it? That's wild, bro. What? Have you not heard of this? No, what is that? You missed the first two styles? Yeah, I skipped the first style, not the first two. Dingbat Apartments is the only one I skipped. Here, we'll watch it.
To allow cars to park. First up, the Dingbat. Typically a 6 to 12 unit apartment.
These are ass, but whatever.
Building. The front of the building is elevated to allow cars to park. Another thing that you'll notice about the Dingbat is that it's a box. It's all about efficiency and filling the lot to maximize the number of units that can fit on a piece of property. Dingbat apartments really define neighborhoods all over Los Angeles. They can be found pretty readily all over the San Fernando Valley, West Los Angeles, and neighborhoods like Culver City and Palms. So why is it called a dingbat? The term dingbat comes from typography. It's a symbol that's not a letter or a number. Many of your dingbat buildings featured a name or had a symbol on the front, a way to sort of decorate these flat, banal facades. The construction of dingbat apartments really exploded in the post-war boom of the 50s and 60s in Los Angeles, when many people were moving for jobs. What better way to give some sort of character to a building that essentially had none than to provide some sort of symbols or some sort of fun, playful elements on the front of the building to make people feel.
My environmental geology professor says stay the fuck away from these because in what equaled, they will drop through the carport.
A little bit more excited about their homes. Here's how to spot a dingbat in the wild. First off, it's essentially a big box.
Why do you not love these? They have so much character. Probably because I lived in one and it's ass. When I lived in one, I fucking hated it. It is so ass, dude.
Is then cannibalized.
This is the starter apartment for many Los Angelinos. Like, inevitably, you are gonna, at a certain point in your life, you are gonna live in one of these fucking piece of shits that has not been updated since 1948 when it was first built. You know what I mean?
To allow parking for cars, which is known as
always the fucking double parking space too. Ugh.
The apartments are typically accessed by stairs along the side yard, and you can see that they've got this dingbat symbol of a flamingo. What you've also got is a full width curb cut that.
Law, maybe the people you know, the people I know in LA live in tents, Law. Wait, what? Sick, chatter. Like, what the fuck? Why are you making it seem like living in a fucking piece of shit apartment like this is like somehow the lap of luxury? Are you okay? Chatters will be like, no, dude, it's a competition and I'm winning. I know way poorer people than you. Okay, sick, man.
That runs the full face of the building. And so the entire width of the lot is given over as essentially a driveway. Now, as someone who's almost been hit by somebody backing out of their dingbat apartment, I can tell you dingbat apartments really don't make for great pedestrian-friendly streets. Now, let's get a better look at how dingbat apartments really define neighborhoods all over Los Angeles. So one of the first things we're gonna—
I work in asbestos removal and these dingbat apartments are my bread and butter. Mark my words, folks. Do not buy these under any circumstances. The cost involved in revamping will be so high you won't be able to subscribe at the top of the hour and it's never worth the cost. Bro, I ran it already. You fucked up, son.
to see when we look at this image is how closely spaced all of these buildings are to each other. There's only street frontage, which is dominated by the parking spaces for the cars, and every building just has a tiny side yard, which you can see here or there. Another thing you'll notice is that all of these lots are maximizing the buildable square footage. The typical side yard setback in Los Angeles is 5 feet. So you can see here that the developers went with the minimum and didn't offer any other space for common areas to make sure that they could get the maximum number of units. But essentially, the tiny lot sizes meant you had no privacy. So if you opened up your window, you were looking directly at your neighbor. Now, this type of building wouldn't be allowed in Los Angeles currently. Zoning wouldn't allow for this many units to be built on a standard 50 by 100 typical LA lot. So these middle density buildings are something that are a dying breed. Dingbat apartments really are quintessentially LA. It's something that makes them home. It's kind of like bad pizza. It's bad pizza, but it's still pizza. Next up is the bungalow court.
Yeah, bungalow courts are sick. Anyway. Would you ever consider getting a Kaya-sized hamster wheel for Kaya? I feel like it would be impossible to buy one that's that large. New Joker, Joker 2, just been released. Okay.
Let's go, boys. It's showtime. Wakey, wakey. Hey, Fleck.
Joaquin Phoenix, my goat. He signed the letter defending John